Okay, we are up to the final video in the history videos. The most recent season in NHL history, 2017-2018. Most recent until today, when today's season starts. I didn't plan it out this way. I really didn't. That I would be finishing this series on the same day that we're starting the new season. But hey, that's kind of fun. Tampa won the division and the conference. 54-23-5. Very nearly ended up with the President's Trophy, but they had a bit of a bobble near the end of the season that cost them that. But they still finished first. Boston finished second at 50-20-12. They were close to finishing first, and they had their bobble towards the end too. The thing with Boston was they weren't even expected to be anywhere near that good this past season. Toronto 49-26-7. They took a step forward. Things are expected in 2018-2019 for them to take a further step forward. Washington won their division at 49-26-7, the same record that Toronto enjoyed in theirs. Pittsburgh 47-29-6. Philadelphia 42-26-14. Finishes third in the Metro. Your wildcard teams: Columbus 45-30-7. And the surprising New Jersey Devils at 44-29-9 move up from 15th to 8th in the conference. The Florida Panthers just barely missed the playoffs at 44-30-8. They were 1 point behind both Columbus and New Jersey. Carolina 36-35-11. The Islanders 35-37-10. The Rangers 34-39-9. Detroit 30-39-13. Montreal 29-40-13. The Ottawa Senators 28-43-11. And Buffalo 25-45-12. So Buffalo had taken steps forward, took a step back last season, and now there's a lot of energy and excitement towards this season for the Buffalo fandom as well. And it's an interesting year because, as I said, you've got New Jersey coming to the playoffs. That was unexpected. Philadelphia came into the playoffs, which was mildly unexpected. However, they do tend to have up years and down years. Pittsburgh and Washington, again, are the top two teams in their division, which many are predicting again for 2018-2019. Boston was a bit of a surprise getting in where they did, and of course Tampa came in, meaning that out of the playoffs that were in the year before, the Rangers, Montreal, and Ottawa. And Ottawa had a tremendously bad season, and that was weird because they got off to a relatively okay start. They didn't lose very many games in regulation out of the gate, so the anticipation was that this was going to be a very good team, and then it just fell apart. Around the same time that they picked up Duchesne and they lost Turris out of their lineup. Turris, in my eyes, never really got on board with Nashville, and it didn't really work as well in Nashville as it did in Ottawa. But, sometimes that's the way that it works, that it just, certain players don't mesh in certain places, and we'll see what happens this coming season. Nashville wins the President's Trophy with a record of 53-18-11. Followed by Winnipeg, 52-20-10. So these two are very, very close. Minnesota, 45-26-11. And meanwhile, in the Pacific Division, it was ruled by the Vegas Golden Knights, 51-24-7. Yes, an expansion team comes into the league to make the league 31 teams strong, and they win their division because, yes, they got a really good expansion draft. They got a very good list to pick from, and George McPhee picked a team. He didn't just pick just random players or just, this guy looks good. He picked a team and he mapped the whole thing out ahead of time. Anaheim 44-25-13, followed by San Jose 45-27-10 are your second and third place teams in the division. Your wild cards: LA at 45-29-8. They finished 2 points short of 100. Colorado 43-30-9. Outside the playoffs, St. Louis misses the playoffs on the last day of the year with a record of 44-32-6, followed by Dallas. Nobody backs out of the playoffs like Dallas, 42-32-8. Calgary, 37-35-10. Edmonton, very disappointing season for the Oilers, 36-40-6. Chicago, who never really recovered from the loss of Corey Crawford, 33-39-10. Vancouver, 31-40-11. Arizona, 29-41-12. So there's your regular season. Vancouver's fallen down the standings. Arizona had an excellent second half to get to 29-41-12. So overall, a lot of surprises with who's where, especially Vegas. The big story all year was the Vegas Golden Knights. Your all-rookie team this year was UC Saros and net, Charlie McAvoy and Will Butcher on the blue line, Matthew Barzal, Clayton Keller, and Brock Besser up front. First team All-Stars, Pekka Rinne in goal, Victor Hedman and Drew Doughty on the blue line, Taylor Hall on the left wing, Connor McDavid at center, and Nikita Kucherov on the right side. Second team All-Stars, Connor Hellebuck in net, PK Subban and Seth Jones on the blue line, Claude Giroux on left wing. I could have had him at center. Nathan McKinnon at center, and Blake Wheeler on the right side. So very solid first and second teams. Your Hart Trophy winner is Taylor Hall of the New Jersey Devils. The New Jersey Devils don't get in the playoffs without Hall's performance. They don't get anywhere near it. Remember, they only made the playoffs by 1 point over Florida. Lindsay Award goes to McDavid. So best player in the league, the players say, is McDavid. Your most valuable player is Hall. The Vezina goes to Pekka Rinne. The Norris goes to Victor Hedman. The Calder goes to Matthew Barzal. The Selke goes to Anze Kopitar. The Lady Byng went to William Karlsson, who, of course, was up for the Selke as well. And there were other awards people thought he deserved a lot of consideration for. The Clancy went to both Daniel and Henrik Sedin, which was very classy as they were on their way out for both of them to be given that award. The Masterton was given to Brian Boyle. The Adams was given to Gerard Gallant because nobody else was going to get close. Not really. It wasn't really going to happen. You could argue New Jersey had fantastic coaching. Colorado had fantastic coaching. But, and Winnipeg as well, Paul Maurice. But it was Gallant's award. The Art Ross, Connor McDavid. The Richard Award goes to Alex Ovechkin. The Jennings went to Jonathan Quick. And the Conn Smythe, Ovechkin of these guys. That's right. Washington. Is it finally the year? You guys know the answer, right? Of course you do. Unless you're brand new to hockey, in which case, welcome. So, in the first round, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the number one team in the Atlantic, they play the wild card New Jersey Devils. The Devils put up a good fight, but they are the underdog for a reason. Tampa wins it in 5. Boston, Toronto, the number 2 and number 3 teams in the Atlantic. I'm still surprised Boston won this series in 7 because Toronto showed a heck of a lot of fight. And that Game 7 is what people are going to remember, is that failure in Game 7. But honestly, I thought Toronto deserved that series. And I still believe that. Washington, number 1 in the Metro. They beat Columbus in 6. The interesting thing with this series was Columbus won the first 2 of that series. And then Washington came back and won the series in 6. And it honestly was the turning point for the Capitals. We just didn't really know it at the time. Well, most of us. There are a few people on this channel that knew that it was a turning point. Because Pittsburgh knocked off Philly in 6. So the expectation was, well, Pittsburgh's going to take out the Capitals. The Pittsburgh Penguins took out Philly using a combination of incredible offense combined with some very solid play early in the series by Matt Murray, which is kind of forgotten later in the playoffs. Out west, Nashville, the number 1 team in the Central, they beat wildcard Colorado in 6. And Nashville looks like, hey, maybe they're going to go back to the Stanley Cup Final that they were in 2017. The number 2 team in the Central is Winnipeg, and they take out number 3 ranked Minnesota in 5. The thing that I remember with the Minnesota series was that Dubnyk kept it close as long as he could, and then just the floodgates opened. Winnipeg was too much for Minnesota. Out in the Pacific, Vegas, who were expected by this guy to be out in the first round, swept the LA Kings, which had nothing to do with Jonathan Quick, who put on a fantastic performance while getting swept. The best performance a goaltender's ever put on while being swept in the first round. And the Kings just couldn't score, which is why they picked up Kovalchuk in the offseason after this one. So 4-game sweep for Vegas in that one. 4-game sweep by San Jose over Anaheim on the other side of things, which sets up a pretty fantastic division final. But again, there's a lot of naysayers, and I'll get to that when we talk about the next round. The numbers 1 and 2 teams in the Atlantic meet each other, Tampa Bay and Boston is not a good match for Tampa. Tampa wins this one in 5, and I thought Tampa just had better depth. I thought Tampa was just better in each area of the game, and Boston was noticeably slower than they were against Toronto. Now, whether it's because Tampa was that much faster, it's up to others to decide, but it was a series that pretty quickly you could tell Tampa was going to win it. Washington did the impossible. They beat the Pittsburgh Penguins for the first time in a very long time in that second round, and they did it in 6. So they avoided losing Game 7 at home by winning it in 6 in Pittsburgh. Meanwhile, in the West, Winnipeg and Nashville played an incredible back and forth series, with Winnipeg winning it in 7, that 7th game in Nashville, and leaving Nashville with some questions about their Vezina winning goaltender Pekka Rinne and his aging, and whether or not he was played too much during the 2017-2018 season, and whether or not maybe it was time to consider giving Saros more of the reins. So it's weird how in the 2017 playoffs, there's talk about Rinne not being able to play in Pittsburgh. Coming out of the 2018 playoffs, there's questions about his playoff performance again. Out in the Pacific, Vegas and San Jose play a series that everybody says, well, they're not very good anyways. That seems to be the conventional wisdom on this. And yet, they both had over 100 points. Vegas had 109. Vegas was solid. So Vegas ends up taking out San Jose in 6 in a very contentious and close series. And honestly, there's a huge rivalry born in this series. It's a series that starts out with everybody getting along. Everybody seems to be really friendly with each other. By the end of the series, there's a lot less friendly and there's a lot less getting along. And while I still think that LA and Vegas is going to be the big feud to watch going forward, I wouldn't rule out San Jose and Vegas either. Now, in the conference finals, Tampa Bay and Washington, both winners of their divisions, meet in that quarterfinal. Game 7 at home, it is Tampa's turn to lose to Washington. It is Washington's turn to be the underdog, taking out a favorite in a Game 7 in their barn. And I thought, during previous seasons where Washington failed, I thought they might have benefited from being the underdog going into a Game 7. Not the favorite, not the home team. I didn't think that helped them, and definitely looked like it helped them being on the road against Tampa. So Washington punches their ticket into the Stanley Cup Final with that win. Out in the West, Vegas. They lose Game 1 against Winnipeg. They lose the first half of the game. They win the second half of the game. And that, to me, seemed key, even though Winnipeg fans at the time said it wasn't. I thought Vegas showed a lot of restraint, a lot of just there seemed to be a lot of calm with Vegas in that series. There was no panic. And they rolled off 4 wins in a row after that. So Vegas wins it in 5. They end up winning that Game 5 in Winnipeg, which was crushing to Jets fans. But Jets fans know they will be back next year. Next year being the one that's starting tonight. Vegas legitimately goes to the Stanley Cup Final. And then there's talk about, well, they won the West, but, the West isn't as strong as the East. It's always weird how that will happen. If an underdog makes it to the Stanley Cup Final, very often you'll hear about how they had an easier run. They didn't have the same opponents as the other team did to get there. And if they win the Stanley Cup, the narrative then will be, well, yeah, but they were better rested than the other team. Yeah, they weren't really the best team, though. And I see that a lot where people will say, well, the way that the NHL playoffs are set up, the best team doesn't really win. I don't hear that with the NBA. I don't hear that with baseball. I don't hear that with football either. I only seem to hear that with hockey, that, well, the NHL doesn't set up its playoffs so the best team wins. Yeah, it does. It's best of 7. It's not single elimination. If it was single elimination, absolutely you're right. It wouldn't be the best team wins. It would be who's best that night. Best of 7, it is the best team that wins each series. It really is. And in the Stanley Cup Finals, the best team wins. Vegas wins Game 1 6-4 in a very high-scoring game for this modern age. And I think goal scoring in 2018-19 is going to go up even more because the NHL wants it to. And Vegas winning Game 1, it looked like maybe Vegas was going to win a Stanley Cup. Washington won Game 2 in Vegas 3-2. Game 3 at home, Washington wins its second game in a row. And now there's some cracks showing. The cross-crease pass is becoming more of a thing. Washington kind of exposes that in the Vegas defense, that they're vulnerable to that. Washington wins Game 4, 6-2 at home, and this is a big game that Vegas is unable to win, and it's the first time all year that Vegas has had a must-win, and they failed to win it. And then in Game 5 in Vegas, Washington wins 4-3. Thrilling Game 5, fantastic game, fantastic end to the year for Vegas, and Washington wins the series in 5. Your playoff leaders, your goals leader is Ovechkin with 15, Kuznetsov leads in assists with 20, and Kuznetsov leads in points with 32. I still state that I think Kuznetsov would have been my pick for the Conn Smythe, just personally. Your wins leader is Braden Holtby with 16, of course. He came in after Grubauer had been the starter against Columbus. And after Grubauer struggled those first couple of games, in goes Holtby, and he rattles off 16 wins along the way to the Cup. And Marc-Andre Fleury gets 13 for Vegas. And of course, the storyline coming out of this as well is that Matt Murray kind of fell apart against Washington. But honestly, so did Marc-Andre Fleury. Everybody kind of fell apart against Washington because they were on that kind of a run in the playoffs. But there you go. The 2017-2018 season. History books are closed now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And I'll talk to you again soon.